Nobody in the Shin estate talked about November 15th. Not the security guards who rotated shifts along the limestone walls. Not the gardeners who trimmed the desert landscaping at dawn. Not Romulo, the head chef who had been cooking in that kitchen for 9 years. Not even Mrs. Pak, the elderly Korean housekeeper who had known Shin Chan-woo longer than anyone else on the property and loved him like her own son. November 15th did not exist in that house. It had been erased, scrubbed from every calendar, every conversation, every casual mention. And the unspoken rule was simple. You do not bring it up. You do not acknowledge it. You do not even think about it too loudly because somehow Chan-woo would know. The last person who mentioned his birthday to his face was a new driver 3 years ago. The man had walked into the kitchen on the morning of November 15th, cheerful and oblivious, and said, "So, does the boss want anything special today for his big day?" He was fired before lunch. No warning, no severance, just gone. After that, nobody asked again. So on the morning of November 13th, when Brenda Holloway was on her hands and knees polishing the hardwood floor in the East Wing hallway and overheard 2 security guards whispering near the kitchen entrance, she should have just kept scrubbing. One of them, a stocky guy named Derek, who always smelled like spearmint gum, leaned toward the other and muttered, "2 days out. You know what that means." The other guard, a tall man named Reggie, immediately shook his head. "Bro, do not even say it." "I am just saying, the whole house gets weird around this time every year. Because everybody with sense knows to keep their mouth shut. His birthday is not a thing. You understand? It is not a thing." Brenda's hand stopped moving on the floor. She had been working in this house for 7 months. 7 months of ironing shirts, organizing files, scrubbing marble counters, making beds with hospital corners so sharp you could cut yourself on them. 7 months of moving through the rooms of a $28 million estate in Scottsdale, Arizona, like a ghost who happened to carry a mop. In those 7 months, she had learned Shin Chan-woo's routines better than she knew her own heartbeat. She knew he took his tea at exactly 6:45 a.m., no sugar, steeped for 4 minutes and not a second more. She knew he preferred his study organized with files color-coded by project, blue for his construction firm, green for the luxury car dealerships, black for the private security contracts. She knew he only ate traditional Korean food on Sundays, and that he sat a little straighter when Mrs. Pak set the dishes in front of him, like the food was pulling him back to somewhere he used to belong. She knew he ate dinner alone, every single night at a table built for 12. She knew he stood on his balcony at 3 a.m. sometimes, staring out at the desert like he was looking for something that was not there anymore. And she knew, because she had cleaned every inch of this mansion, that there was not a single personal photograph anywhere in the entire house. Not on the walls, not on the shelves, not on his desk, not anywhere. A $28 million estate, and not one single picture of anyone he loved. Now she was learning that on top of all that emptiness, this man had also erased his own birthday from existence. Brenda sat back on her heels. The polishing cloth was still warm in her hand. The 2 guards had already moved on, their footsteps fading down the corridor. She stayed there for a long time, kneeling on a floor that cost more than the house she grew up in, thinking about a man who had everything in the world except one person who would make him a birthday cake. And something shifted inside her. It was not a crush. It was not pity. It was something deeper and harder to name, the kind of recognition that happens when you look at another person's loneliness and see your own reflection staring back. She stood up slowly. She tucked the cloth into her apron. She looked down the hallway toward the wing where Chan-woo's study sat behind a heavy oak door that was always closed. And she made a decision that was either the bravest or the stupidest thing she had ever done. She was going to throw Shin Chan-woo a birthday, whether he wanted one or not. But here is the thing nobody in that house knew yet. What Brenda was about to do on the night of November 15th would not just leave Chan-woo speechless. It would crack open a wound he had spent 15 years sealing shut. And once that wound opened, nothing in this house and nothing between the two of them would ever be the same. Now let me ask you something. If you found out your boss had not celebrated their birthday in 15 years, would you risk your job to change that? Really think about it. And if this story already has you curious, go ahead and hit that like button right now. Now let us keep going. 7 months earlier, Brenda Holloway stood outside the gates of the Shin estate with a single suitcase and a knot in her stomach the size of her fist. She had driven from Memphis, Tennessee, in a 2011 Honda Civic with 247,000 miles on it and an air conditioning unit that had given up somewhere around Albuquerque. Her interview had been over the phone, conducted by Mrs. Pack in clipped, efficient English. The job was live-in housekeeper. The salary was 4 times what Brenda had been making combined at her 3 jobs back home, room and board included. She had not asked too many questions. When you have spent 6 years working yourself to the bone to keep a roof over your younger brother's head, you do not ask questions about a salary that could actually let you breathe for the first time since you were 19 years old. Brenda's story was not complicated, but it was heavy. Her parents, Clarence and Rosalind Holloway, died in a car accident on Interstate 40 when Brenda was 19, and her younger brother Darius was 13. There was no inheritance. There was no life insurance policy. There was a mortgage on a house in South Memphis that the bank was not interested in being patient about. So Brenda dropped out of her sophomore year at the University of Memphis. She moved back into the house. She got a job cleaning rooms at a hotel in Germantown during the day, waitressed at a barbecue restaurant in Midtown in the evenings, and picked up overnight shifts at a laundromat on Poplar Avenue 3 nights a week. She did this for 6 years. She made sure Darius had clean clothes for school. She helped him with his homework at the kitchen table at 5 a.m. because that was the only time they were both awake and in the same room. She went to his track meets on 3 hours of sleep and cheered so loud the other parents stared. And when Darius graduated high school with a 3.9 GPA and a full academic scholarship to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Brenda stood in the bleachers and cried so hard her mascara ran down to her chin, and she did not care who saw. For the first time in her adult life, she had only herself to take care of. The Scottsdale job felt like a lifeline thrown from some distant universe where things actually worked out for people like her. She took it without hesitation. Her first day at the estate was November of the previous year. Mrs. Pack met her at the service entrance, a small Korean woman in her late 60s with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that assessed Brenda from shoes to hairline in approximately 2 seconds. "You are taller than I expected," Mrs. Pack said. "I get that a lot," Brenda said. Mrs. Pack almost smiled. Almost. The tour of the house took 45 minutes and left Brenda's head spinning. The estate was massive, limestone and glass, sprawling across the desert landscape like something that belonged on the cover of an architecture magazine. There was a main residence, a guest wing, a staff wing, a gym, an indoor pool, a 6-car garage, and an inner courtyard with a reflecting pool and desert landscaping that looked like it had never been used. "The courtyard is Mr. Shin's," Mrs. Pack said as they passed the glass doors overlooking it. "He does not go there. No one goes there. Leave it alone." Brenda nodded, but she looked through the glass at the courtyard and thought it was the most beautiful wasted space she had ever seen. Her first encounter with Chan-woo happened 20 minutes later. Mrs. Pack was walking her through the main foyer, explaining the filing system for the study, when the front door opened and a man walked in. Brenda's first thought was that he looked like someone had carved him from stone and then forgot to add warmth. He was tall for a Korean man, broad-shouldered, with a face that was striking in a way that made you want to look twice and then look away, because something about his expression told you that your attention was not welcome. He was wearing a dark suit. His phone was pressed to his ear, and he was speaking rapid Korean in a voice that sounded like control bottled in a glass container. Mrs. Pak straightened. "Mr. Shin, this is Brenda, your new housekeeper." Chan-woo glanced at Brenda for exactly 1 second. His eyes registered her existence the way a person registers a piece of furniture they walk past every day. Present, unimportant, already forgotten. He kept walking. He did not nod. He did not speak. He disappeared down the corridor, and the sound of his Korean filled the hallway for a few more seconds before a door closed and cut it off. Mrs. Pak patted Brenda's arm gently. "Do not take it personally. He does that to everyone." Over the next 7 months, Brenda became essential to the household in the way that oxygen is essential, completely necessary and completely invisible. She learned every inch of the estate. She knew which floorboards creaked in the east wing and which windows let in a draft on windy nights. She knew that Chan-woo went through exactly 3 pens a week because he wrote notes to himself on scraps of paper, fragmented thoughts, numbers, single words in Korean, and then threw them away. She always emptied the trash before he could notice how much of himself he was discarding. She was good at her job, quietly, relentlessly good. But what made the rest of the staff fall in love with her was not her efficiency, it was the humming. Brenda hummed while she worked. It was involuntary, like breathing. Old gospel songs her mother used to sing at Greater Faith Baptist Church. R&B classics, Anita Baker, Lauryn Hill, Jasmine Sullivan. Sometimes, when she was alone in a room and lost in the rhythm of her work, the humming would grow into actual singing, soft and full and warm, the kind of voice that made you stop what you were doing and just listen. Romulo heard it first. He was prepping vegetables in the kitchen one morning when Brenda walked in to wipe down the counters, and she was singing an Erykah Badu song under her breath. He put his knife down and did not pick it back up until she finished. After that, he started timing his prep work to coincide with Brenda's kitchen cleaning shifts. The gardeners heard her through open windows. The night shift security guards heard her through the walls when she mopped the hallways at midnight. One by one, person by person, the staff of the Shin estate developed an unspoken ritual of finding excuses to be wherever Brenda was working, because wherever she was, the air felt different, warmer, less lonely. She also remembered everyone's name. She asked about their families. She baked cookies on Saturday nights using her mother's recipe and left them in the staff kitchen with a note that said, "Help yourselves." She brought hot coffee to the overnight security guards without being asked, because she noticed they were always cold by 2 a.m. and too proud to complain about it. Taemin noticed. Kwon Taemin was Chan-woo's right-hand man and head of security, a compact, sharp-eyed Korean man in his mid-30s who had been with Chan-woo for 11 years and whose loyalty bordered on religious devotion. Taemin's entire purpose was to protect Chan-woo, and anything unusual registered on his radar like a siren. The unusual thing about Brenda was how much the staff loved her. In Taemin's experience, that kind of universal affection was either genuine or the most sophisticated manipulation he had ever seen. He ran a background check on her. It came back clean. Completely, boringly clean. This almost made him more suspicious. He kept watching. Meanwhile, Chan-woo's business life was getting complicated. One evening, Brenda was cleaning the hallway outside his study and heard his voice through the door, louder than usual, speaking in English. He was on a phone call. "I told you my answer, Rizzo. It was no 6 months ago and it is no now. My firm is not for sale." A pause. "Then file whatever you want to file. I have been threatened by better men than you." Another pause. Then Chan-woo's voice dropped to something cold and flat, like metal on metal. "Everyone has a price? That is interesting, because the last person who tried to put a price on my name is now running a parking lot in Hoboken. Have a good evening." The call ended. Brenda heard something heavy placed on the desk, possibly a phone, possibly a fist. Then silence. She finished cleaning the hallway and moved on, but she remembered the name. Rizzo. That night, alone in her small room in the staff wing, Brenda lay on her back and stared at the ceiling. She thought about Chan-woo sitting alone in that study behind a closed door. She thought about 12-seat dining tables and 3 a.m. balconies and the total absence of photographs. She did not yet know about the birthday. She did not yet know about his mother. She did not yet know about the locked drawer in his desk. But she knew enough. She knew the shape of loneliness when she saw it, because she had worn that shape herself for 6 years. November 13th, 2 days before the birthday that did not exist. Brenda sat on the edge of her bed at 6 a.m. with a notebook and a pen, and a feeling in her chest that was somewhere between determination and pure insanity. She had 72 hours. She had almost no money, her savings were thin because she had been sending extra cash to Darius for textbooks, even though he told her to stop. She had no authority in this house. She was staff. The lowest-ranking staff, in fact. She cleaned things. That was her entire scope of power. And she was about to organize a secret birthday celebration for a man who had fired someone just for mentioning the word. She started with Mrs. Pack. She found the older woman in the kitchen at 6:30 a.m., drinking barley tea and reading a Korean newspaper. Brenda sat down across from her and said, "Mrs. Pack, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say no." Mrs. Pack looked at her over the rim of her cup. This is not a promising beginning. Brenda told her. She told her she knew Chan-woo's birthday was on November 15th. She told her she wanted to do something for him, nothing big, nothing loud, nothing that would feel like a party or a spectacle. Something small and real and personal. Something that said, "We see you. You matter." Mrs. Pack set down her tea. Her hand trembled slightly. "You do not understand," the old woman said quietly. "He stopped celebrating after his mother died. He was 17. She was the only person who ever made it special for him. After she passed, he sealed that part of himself away. The birthday became the day he lost her, not the day he was born." "I understand that," Brenda said. "I lost both my parents when I was 19. My birthday was hard for years after. But at some point, someone has to remind you that the day you came into this world still matters, even if the person who celebrated it the most is gone." Mrs. Pack stared at her for a long moment. Her eyes were wet. "What do you need?" she asked. Brenda let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Next was Romulo. She found him in the walk-in pantry doing inventory. When she told him the plan, he put down his clipboard and rubbed his face with both hands. "You know what happens if this goes wrong," he said. It was not a question. "We all lose our jobs," Brenda said. "My daughter starts college next year." "I know." "You know, and you are still asking me." "I am still asking you." Romulo was quiet for a while. Then he said, "What do you need me to cook?" The security team was harder. Derek and Reggie were on board immediately because Brenda had earned their loyalty through 7 months of midnight coffee and genuine kindness. But the challenge was T-Min. He would notice any unusual activity. He noticed everything. Brenda's solution was strategic. She asked Mrs. Pack to create a diversion for T-Min on the evening of November 15th. A fabricated concern about a security camera malfunction in the East Wing that would require his personal attention and keep him occupied during the courtyard setup. The plan itself was simple. On the evening of November 15th, Chan-woo had a business dinner scheduled at a restaurant in downtown Scottsdale. He would be out of the house for at least 3 hours. During that window, Brenda and the staff would transform the inner courtyard, the beautiful, abandoned space that no one ever used, into a private birthday setting. Not a party, not balloons, Not a hired DJ or a catered event or anything that smelled like spectacle. Something handmade, something personal, something that whispered instead of shouted. Brenda spent November 13th and 14th preparing. She made paper lanterns by hand using techniques she researched online based on traditional Korean designs. Her fingers cramped. She cut herself twice with scissors. The first batch looked terrible. The second batch was better. The third batch looked like they might have actually come from someone who knew what they were doing. She wrote a birthday card by hand and then went door to door, quietly, discreetly, asking every staff member if they wanted to add a message. Every single person said yes. The security guard who barely spoke English wrote his message in Spanish and asked Brenda to translate it. She did. The biggest challenge was the food. Brenda had learned from Mrs. Pak that Chan-woo's mother used to make a specific Korean rice cake for his birthday called songpyeon. Small, crescent-shaped cakes filled with sweetened sesame or chestnut, traditionally made during Chuseok, but apparently a special birthday tradition in the Shin household. Mrs. Pak taught Brenda the recipe. They practiced in the kitchen at midnight on November 13th, while Romulo stood guard at the door. The first attempt was a disaster. The dough was too sticky, the filling leaked, and the cakes looked like tiny, misshapen pillows that had been sat on. The second attempt was marginally better but still wrong. The texture was off. The filling ratio was incorrect. Mrs. Pak shook her head and said, "His mother would not serve these." At 1 a.m. on November 14th, running on coffee and stubbornness, they tried again. This time, Brenda adjusted the flour ratio based on Mrs. Pak's corrections. She shaped each cake carefully, pinching the edges closed with her fingertips, pressing the pattern into the top the way Mrs. Pak showed her. When the first one came out of the steamer, Mrs. Pak picked it up, turned it over in her hands, and brought it to her mouth. She chewed slowly, then she closed her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, "that is it, that is her recipe." And then Mrs. Pak cried. Standing in the kitchen at 1 a.m. in her house slippers, holding a songpyeon that tasted like a dead woman's love, she cried. Brenda held her and let her cry and did not try to make it stop. The next complication arrived in the form of T-Min's suspicion. On November 14th, he noticed that 2 security guards had switched shifts without authorization. He noticed Mrs. Pak leaving the kitchen later than usual. He noticed Brenda carrying supplies to her room that were not cleaning supplies. He did not know what was happening, but his instincts told him something was off, and T-Min's instincts had kept Chan-woo alive for 11 years. He started watching Brenda more closely. That evening, Brenda called her cousin Felicia in Atlanta. Felicia Holloway was 22, loud, loving, and the closest thing Brenda had to a sister. When Brenda told her what she was planning, Felicia was silent for approximately 4 seconds, which was a personal record. "Bren, let me make sure I am hearing this correctly. You are planning a secret birthday party for a man who does not even know your last name." "It is not a party. It is more like a gesture." "A gesture for your billionaire boss, the Korean one, who you told me has never once said good morning to you." "He is not a billionaire, I do not think, and it is not about that." "Then what is it about?" Brenda was quiet for a moment. "It is about nobody should feel like the day they were born does not matter, Felicia. Nobody. MMHMM. And this has nothing to do with the fact that you described this man to me as, and I quote, the most beautiful, sad person I have ever seen." "I never said that." "You absolutely said that. October 3rd. I have receipts." Brenda hung up on her, but she was smiling. Later that night, she thought about something she had not told Felicia. 2 weeks ago, she had been cleaning Chan-woo's study late in the evening, well past her usual shift, because she had gotten behind on the filing. She thought the room was empty. She was on her knees organizing the bottom shelf of his bookcase when the door opened. Chan-woo walked in. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, they were 3 feet apart. He was standing. She was kneeling. The desk lamp cast warm light across the room, and in that light she saw his face without its usual armor, not cold, not controlled, just tired. Deeply, profoundly tired. He said, "You are always here." She said, "That is my job." He said nothing else. He walked to his desk and sat down. She went back to organizing the shelf. And for the next 20 minutes, neither of them spoke, and neither of them acknowledged that the silence between them felt different from any silence that had come before. It was comfortable. It was safe. It felt, for those 20 minutes, like they were 2 people who did not have to perform for each other. Brenda finished the shelf and left the room and did not look back, because she was afraid that if she looked back, he would see something on her face that she was not ready to explain. That memory was in her mind as she lay in bed on the night of November 14th, staring at the ceiling, knowing that tomorrow she was going to either change everything or ruin everything. She did not sleep. November 15th arrived with a desert sunrise that turned the sky over Scottsdale into liquid copper. Brenda was up by 5 a.m. She went through her normal routine, tea for Chanwoo at 6:45, cleaning schedule, filing, laundry. She moved through the house with the same quiet efficiency as always, but her pulse was running about 30 beats faster than usual and her hands would not stop trembling. The first crisis hit at 2 p.m. Chanwoo's business dinner was scheduled for 6:30 p.m. at a high-end restaurant in downtown Scottsdale. At 2 p.m., Brenda overheard T-Min on the phone in the security office saying the dinner had been canceled. The other party had rescheduled. Brenda's stomach dropped to the floor. If Chanwoo stayed home, the entire plan collapsed. She could not set up the courtyard with him in the house. He would notice. He would ask questions. It would be over before it started. She found Mrs. Pack in the laundry room and whispered the problem. Mrs. Pack thought for exactly 10 seconds and then picked up the internal phone and called T-Min directly. "T-Min, I just received a call from the Paradise Valley dealership. The new display vehicles arrived with incorrect registration paperwork. The manager says Mr. Shin needs to see it personally before they can put anything on the floor." T-Min was skeptical. Can it not wait until tomorrow? The transport company is charging daily storage fees. Every day those vehicles sit costs $15,000. T-Min relayed the information to Chanwoo. Chanwoo was annoyed but agreed to drive out to Paradise Valley. He left the estate at 4:30 p.m. T-Min went with him. Brenda had approximately 3.5 hours. She moved faster than she had ever moved in her life. Derek and Reggie helped her carry the paper lanterns from her room to the courtyard. Romulo started on the food. The songpyeon was already made and stored, but he was also preparing a spread of Chanwoo's favorite Korean dishes, banchan and japchae and doenjang based on Mrs. Pack's guidance. The second crisis hit at 5:15 p.m. The string lights Brenda had bought at a discount store in Tempe, the only ones she could afford, short-circuited when she plugged them into the outdoor outlet. Half the strand went dead. The other half flickered like a distress signal. Romulo appeared with a roll of electrical tape and a pair of pliers. "I grew up in Manila," he said, already pulling the dead section apart. "We made Christmas lights work with less than this." He fixed them in 11 minutes. The third crisis almost ended everything. At 6:45 p.m., Brenda was carrying the tray of songpyeon through the east corridor toward the courtyard. The cakes were arranged in a careful circle on a ceramic plate Mrs. Pack had provided, a plate from Mrs. Pack's own collection, hand-painted, because his mother would have used something beautiful. Brenda was halfway down the corridor when she heard footsteps, hard-soled shoes, deliberate pace, coming from around the corner. T-Min, he had come back early. Chanwoo was still at the dealership, but T-Min had returned to handle the security camera malfunction Mrs. Pack had fabricated. Brenda looked left. Supply closet. She ducked inside, pulling the door shut behind her with one hand while balancing the tray of songpyeon against her chest with the other. She stood in the dark, pressed between a shelf of cleaning supplies and a stack of folded towels, holding a plate of Korean rice cakes against her heart, listening to T-Min's footsteps pass by 3 feet from the door. Her heart was pounding so hard, she was certain he could hear it through the wall. The footsteps paused, then continued, then faded. Brenda exhaled. She looked down at the songpyeon. Not a single one had shifted. "Okay, Mom," she whispered to no one. "I know you are helping me right now." By 7:45 p.m., the courtyard was transformed. Paper lanterns hung from the wooden pergola beams, glowing in soft amber and cream. The reflecting pool was lined with floating candles that Brenda had made from tea lights and small ceramic bowls. The desert sky above was deepening into indigo, and the first stars were beginning to appear. A single table was set near the edge of the reflecting pool. On it sat the songpyeon, arranged on Mrs. Pack's hand-painted plate. Beside the plate was a stack of handwritten cards, one from every staff member, tied together with a simple ribbon. And next to the cards was a small wrapped gift from Brenda. Inside was a leather-bound journal she had ordered online with money she had saved by skipping her own lunches for 2 weeks. She chose it because she had noticed Chan-woo writing notes on scraps of paper that he always threw away. She thought maybe he needed a place where his thoughts could stay. The staff assembled quietly along the edges of the courtyard, Romulo in his kitchen apron, the gardeners in their work clothes, Derek and Reggie in their security uniforms, 3 housekeeping assistants who had been part of the card-writing effort, Mrs. Pack, standing slightly apart, wearing a traditional Korean blouse she had not worn in years, and Brenda in the center, standing beside the table in a simple white blouse and dark skirt, looking like someone who had just built a cathedral out of paper and candlelight and was now terrified it would collapse. Chan-woo arrived home at 8:47 p.m. T-Min met him at the front door. T-Min, who by now had figured out what was happening and against every instinct in his body had chosen to let it play out. Not for Brenda, for Chan-woo. Because even T-Min, with his walls and his suspicion and his rigid devotion to protocol, had noticed that his boss was disappearing into himself year by year, and he did not know how to stop it. T-Min said, "Mrs. Pack requests your presence in the courtyard." Chan-woo frowned. "The courtyard?" "Yes, sir." "I do not go to the courtyard." "I know, sir." She was insistent. Chan-woo stared at him for a moment. Something in T-Min's expression must have registered, because Chan-woo did not argue. He walked through the house, through the main corridor, past his study, past the dining room, toward the glass doors that led to the courtyard. He pushed them open and stopped. The lanterns, the candles, the reflecting pool shimmering with tiny lights. The staff, his staff, standing along the edges of the courtyard, watching him with expressions that ranged from nervous to hopeful to terrified. And in the center, a woman he had barely looked at for 7 months, standing beside a table with songpyeon that smelled exactly like his childhood. Chan-woo did not move. His face went completely still, not cold, not controlled, but frozen. Like a system that had received an input it was not designed to process. Brenda's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her thighs to make them stop. It did not work. She looked him in the eye and said, "I know you do not celebrate this day, and I know I might lose my job for this, but I wanted you to know that every single person standing here is grateful you were born, and I thought maybe you should hear that at least once." Chan-woo said nothing. Brenda had not planned what happened next. She had planned the lanterns, the songpyeon, the cards, the journal, the speech, but she had not planned this. She opened her mouth, and she sang. It was a Korean lullaby. Mrs. Pack had taught it to her over the past 2 days, line by line, syllable by syllable. Brenda did not speak Korean. She had learned the words phonetically, practicing in her room until 3 a.m., recording herself on her phone and playing it back and cringing and trying again. The lullaby was called Sumun Sumun. It was a song about a mother watching over her sleeping child. It was the song Chan-woo's mother used to sing to him every birthday night after the cake was eaten and the candles were blown out and the world was small and safe and warm. Brenda's voice rose into the desert air. It was not a performance. It was not polished or staged. It was a black woman from Memphis, Tennessee, standing in a courtyard in Arizona, singing a Korean lullaby she did not fully understand to a man she was only beginning to know. And the rawness of it, the imperfect pronunciation, the perfect emotion, was what made it devastating. Romulo lowered his head. Mrs. Pack pressed both hands over her mouth. Reggie looked at the ground. Derek blinked rapidly and did not look at anyone. Chan-woo stood at the threshold of the glass doors, and for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15, he did not breathe. He had not heard that song in 15 years. Not since the last night his mother was alive. Not since the night she tucked him in and sang it, and he fell asleep thinking the world would always feel that safe. When Brenda finished, the courtyard was completely silent. Chan-woo looked at the songpyeon, his mother's recipe. He looked at the paper lanterns that Brenda had made with her own hands. He looked at the people standing around the edges of the courtyard, people who worked for him, people he paid, people he had never asked a single personal question, and they were all here on a night they could have been resting because a woman with a mop and a voice told them it mattered. He looked at Brenda. He said one word, quietly, almost to himself. How? Then he turned and walked back into the house. Brenda's heart dropped through her chest. She felt the air leave her lungs like someone had punctured them. She looked at Mrs. Pack with wide eyes, and Mrs. Pack shook her head gently. Wait, the old woman said. She pointed through the glass doors. In the dim hallway, just barely visible, Chan-woo had stopped walking. He was standing with one hand pressed against the wall, his back to the courtyard, his head bowed. His shoulders were shaking. Shin Chan-woo, the man nobody had seen show a single emotion in 15 years, was crying. The morning after the birthday, the estate held its breath. Staff moved through the hallways with the careful quiet of people who were not sure if they were about to be praised or fired. Romulo burnt the eggs on purpose, just so he would have something to fix if things went sideways. Derek volunteered for a double shift so he could be present if there were consequences. Brenda did not sleep. She lay in bed until 5 a.m., got up, showered, put on her uniform, and went to the kitchen to prepare Chan-woo's morning tea. Same temperature, same steep time, same cup. She carried it to his study at 6:45 a.m. She knocked twice the way she always did. No answer. She opened the door. Chan-woo was already there. He was sitting behind his desk, still wearing yesterday's clothes, which told Brenda he had not gone to bed at all. The leather journal she had given him was open on the desk. He had written something on the first page. She could not read it from where she stood. He looked up at her, and for the first time in 7 months, he said her name. Brenda. She almost dropped the tray. She set it down carefully, using both hands to make sure the cup did not rattle against the saucer. Sit down, he said. She hesitated. She had never sat in this room. She had only ever cleaned it. She pulled out the chair across from his desk and sat. He was quiet for a long moment, looking at her with an expression she could not read. It was not coldness. It was not warmth. It was something closer to confusion, like he was trying to solve a math problem that kept giving him an answer he did not expect. Where did you learn that song? He asked. Mrs. Pack taught me. The songpyeon. Mrs. Pack taught me that too. It took 3 tries. Why did you make it? Brenda folded her hands in her lap. Because I did not want to just buy you a cake from a store. I wanted to make something that was yours, something that meant something specific to you. You could have been fired. I know. You did it anyway. I did. He leaned back in his chair. Why? Brenda looked at him, really looked at him, past the suit, past the desk, past the empire he had built around himself like a fortress. Because I know what it feels like to think nobody sees you. I spent 6 years thinking that. Working 3 jobs, raising my brother, eating dinner alone, pretending I was fine. And the whole time I just kept thinking it would be nice if one person noticed. Just one. She paused. I did not want you to feel that way on your birthday. That is all. Chan-woo said nothing for a while. Then he pulled the journal toward him and turned it so she could see the first page. In his sharp, precise handwriting, he had written a single sentence in Korean. He translated it for her. The first gift I have received since my mother died. Brenda's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The conversation lasted 45 minutes. It was the longest Chan-woo had talked to anyone about anything personal in over a decade. He did not tell her about his mother, not yet. He did not tell her about the locked drawer. But he told her that the courtyard was built as a replica of the garden at his childhood home in Incheon. He told her he had not been able to walk into it since the house was completed because looking at it made him feel like he was 7 years old again. He told her the lanterns she made reminded him of Chuseok festivals with his family, and that the memory hit him so hard he did not know how to stay standing. Brenda listened. She did not interrupt. She did not offer advice or platitudes. She just listened, and that, more than the songpyeon, more than the song, more than the lanterns, was the thing that cracked him open. After that morning, everything shifted. It started small. Chan-woo began saying good morning when Brenda passed him in the hallway. He asked if she had eaten. One afternoon, she was cleaning the windows in the dining room and he walked through, stopped, and said, "You missed a spot." And when she looked at the glass and saw nothing, she turned back and caught the faintest hint of a smile on his face before he walked away. It was such a small thing. But to a man who had not smiled in years and a woman who had not been seen in longer, it felt like the ground shifting beneath their feet. Then came the bigger things. Chan-woo told Taemin to increase Brenda's salary. Brenda did not ask for it. Chan-woo did not tell her about it. She found out when she checked her bank account and called Mrs. Pak in confusion, and Mrs. Pak simply said, "He notices more than you think." Chan-woo started eating dinner in the kitchen instead of the 12-seat dining room. He did not announce this. He just showed up one evening and sat at the small kitchen table where Brenda, Romulo, and Mrs. Pak ate. He said almost nothing. He just ate and listened to their conversation, and occasionally looked up when Brenda laughed, which she did often, and which filled the kitchen with a sound he was becoming addicted to without understanding why. Taemin pulled Brenda aside one afternoon in the service corridor. His face was carved from granite. "Whatever you think is happening here, stop," he said. "You are staff. He is the boss. People who blur that line in this house do not last." Brenda met his eyes. "Nothing is happening, Taemin. I did something kind for someone who needed it. That is all." "Keep it that way." She walked away, her heart hammering. Not because of Taemin's warning, because she was starting to suspect he was right, something was happening, and she did not know how to stop it. She was not even sure she wanted to. One evening, a week after the birthday, Brenda was in the courtyard. Chan-woo had asked the gardeners to start maintaining it again, trimming the desert plants, cleaning the reflecting pool, replacing the burned-out lights. The space was alive now in a way it had not been before. Brenda was sitting on the stone bench near the pool, singing softly to herself. A Jasmine Sullivan song, "Bust Your Windows," but the slow version, the one that sounds less like revenge and more like heartbreak. She did not know that Chan-woo was standing on his balcony directly above, leaning on the railing, listening. He stood there for 8 full minutes. When she stopped singing, he stayed for 3 more, standing in the dark, memorizing the silence she left behind. Meanwhile, the business war with Vincent Rizzo was escalating. Rizzo filed a fraudulent lawsuit against Chan Woo's construction firm, alleging safety code violations on 3 major projects in Bellevue, Washington. The allegations were fabricated, but they were detailed and convincing, and they triggered an investigation that froze 2 of Chan Woo's most valuable contracts. Chan Woo flew to Seattle for 3 days to deal with it personally. He met with lawyers. He met with inspectors. He met with the Bellevue City Planning Board. He spent 72 hours in a state of controlled fury, disassembling Rizzo's claims point by point. While he was gone, the estate felt hollow. Brenda went about her work, but the rooms felt too big and too quiet, and she could not explain why the absence of a man who used to pretend she did not exist now felt like a hole in the center of her day. When Chan Woo returned, he found Brenda in the kitchen washing dishes. He stood in the doorway for a moment before she noticed him. "You are back," she said, and then immediately felt stupid for saying something so obvious. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. He set it on the counter. "Open it," he said. Inside was a set of art supplies: high-quality colored paper, fine-tipped brushes, watercolor paints, and a book on traditional Korean papercraft. "For your lanterns," Chan Woo said. "The ones you made were better than anything I could buy, but you should have proper materials." Brenda stared at the gift. She stared at it for too long, and she knew she was staring at it for too long, and she could not stop. Because her heart had just done something it was not supposed to do. It had leaped. It had lurched. It had rearranged itself around a man who bought her art supplies because he noticed she made lanterns out of cheap paper and thought she deserved better. She looked up at him. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once, turned, and left the kitchen. Brenda stood at the counter holding a set of watercolor paints, and the water in the sink ran cold behind her, and she thought, with a clarity that was both beautiful and terrifying, "I am in trouble." 3 weeks after the birthday, Chan Woo's world began closing in on 2 fronts. The first was the Rizzo situation. The lawsuit was baseless, but it was generating headlines. Business publications in Seattle and San Francisco ran stories about the safety allegations. Chan Woo's investors in Beverly Hills, 3 major players who had bankrolled a high-rise development project, were getting nervous. 2 of them requested emergency meetings. One of them openly suggested that Chan Woo should consider settling with Rizzo to make it all go away. Chan Woo did not settle. Chan Woo did not make things go away, but the pressure was draining him. Brenda noticed it in small ways: the way he held his jaw tighter, the way he skipped meals, the way the lights in his study stayed on later and later each night. The second front was more dangerous, and Brenda did not even know it existed. Vincent Rizzo was a businessman based in Bellevue, Washington. Mid-50s, silver-haired, the kind of man who smiled when he threatened you and sent wine baskets after he sabotaged your contracts. He had been trying to absorb Chan Woo's construction empire through a hostile corporate strategy for over a year, and every attempt had failed because Chan Woo was smarter, faster, and more stubborn than anyone Rizzo had ever gone up against. So Rizzo changed tactics. If he could not beat Chan Woo in the boardroom, he would beat him from the inside. Through his network, a web of corporate informants, paid insiders, and people who owed him favors, Rizzo learned something interesting. Shin Chan Woo, the man who showed no weakness, who ate alone and spoke to no one and operated like a machine made of discipline and silence, had started behaving differently. He was spending more time at home. His schedule, which had been rigid for years, was becoming flexible. And there was a new person in his inner circle, a housekeeper who had somehow gotten closer to him than anyone on his payroll. Rizzo sent a woman named Diane Cho to Scottsdale. She presented herself as a representative from a Korean-American investment group interested in partnering with Chan Woo's construction firm. Her real job was intelligence gathering. During the meeting at the estate, held in the formal living room while Brenda served tea and refreshments, Diane noticed everything. She noticed the way Chan-woo's eyes tracked Brenda as she moved through the room. She noticed the way Brenda placed his tea on the table with a familiarity that was too personal for a servant. She noticed that Chan-woo's voice, which had been flat and businesslike throughout the entire meeting, softened by one barely perceptible degree when he said, "Thank you, Brenda." Diane reported back to Rizzo that evening. "There is a woman," she said. "Not a romantic partner, a housekeeper, but he watches her, and she has influence. The entire staff follows her lead." Rizzo's response was immediate. "Find out everything about her." Within a week, Rizzo's people had pulled Brenda's entire background. Her parents' deaths, the debt she had accumulated during the 6 years of raising Darius, her brother's scholarship at Vanderbilt, her cousin Felicia in Atlanta, her credit score, her employment history, every address she had lived at since she was 19. Brenda Holloway had done nothing wrong in her entire life. She was clean, but that did not matter to Rizzo. He did not need her to be guilty. He just needed her to look guilty. Back at the estate, Chan-woo and Brenda were circling each other in a dance neither of them had formally acknowledged. Late one night, Brenda was cleaning the hallway outside Chan-woo's bedroom. It was past midnight. She should have been done hours ago, but she had fallen behind because she spent the evening helping Mrs. Pack reorganize the pantry, and she did not like leaving tasks unfinished. She was wiping down the baseboards when she heard something through Chan-woo's bedroom door. His voice, but not the voice she knew, not the controlled, measured voice that commanded rooms and ended phone calls. This voice was small, young, fractured. He was speaking Korean in his sleep, and even though Brenda did not understand the words, she understood the sound. She had made that sound herself in the months after her parents died, when she would dream about her mother and wake up reaching for someone who was not there. He was calling for his mother. Brenda stood outside that door with tears running silently down her face. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. She did not turn it. She did not go in. That was not her place. That was not her right. But the next morning she made songpyeon again. Not for an occasion, not for a holiday, just because. She placed the plate outside his study door with a handwritten note that said, "You are not alone." Chan-woo found it when he opened the door at 6:30 a.m. He read the note. He stood in the doorway for a long time. Then he walked to his desk, opened the locked drawer, the one that had been closed for 3 years, and placed Brenda's note inside. Right next to the photograph of his mother on his 7th birthday. The last birthday she ever made him a cake. 2 days later, T-Min confronted Chan-woo directly. They were in the security office, reviewing the status of the Rizzo situation, when T-Min closed the door and said, "Boss, I have been with you for 11 years. I have never questioned your judgment, but I need to say something and I need you to hear it." Chan-woo looked at him. "This woman," T-Min said, "Brenda, she is changing the way you operate. You are distracted. You are making decisions based on emotion instead of strategy. She is a risk." Chan-woo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "She is the only person in this house who has never asked me for anything." T-Min opened his mouth, closed it. He had no argument for that because it was true. Then the first attack came. Brenda was in her room on a Tuesday evening when her phone rang. Unknown number. Arizona area code. She picked up. A man's voice, smooth, polite American accent, said he represented a talent investment group based in New York City. He said they had identified her brother Darius as a top candidate for a prestigious paid internship at a major firm in Manhattan. Full housing, full stipend, connections that could launch his career. All Brenda had to do was meet with them, answer a few questions about her current employer. Nothing major, just context. Something about the man's voice made Brenda's skin crawl. It was too smooth, too prepared, The offer was too perfect, arriving too conveniently from a number she did not recognize. She said, "I am not interested," and hung up. She sat on her bed for a long time afterward, holding her phone, staring at the wall. Her instinct told her something was wrong, but she did not know what. She did not know who Vincent Rizzo was. She did not know she was being targeted. And she did not tell Chan-woo about the call, because in her mind she was protecting him. She was handling it. She was being strong. This was a mistake that would cost her everything. The envelope arrived 4 weeks after the birthday. It was delivered to T-Min by courier. No return address, no sender name, just a thick manila envelope sealed with clear tape. Inside were 32 pages of documents, emails, financial transfer records, communications logs. All of them pointed to Brenda Holloway. The emails, attributed to an account bearing Brenda's name, showed a months-long correspondence with a contact at a company affiliated with Vincent Rizzo's corporate network. The messages contained confidential details about Chan-woo's construction projects, bid amounts, investor identities, contract timelines. Information that only someone inside the household would have access to. The financial transfers showed money moving from an untraceable source into an account linked to Darius Holloway's name at a bank branch near Vanderbilt University. Small amounts, irregular intervals, designed to look like payment for information delivered over time. The fabrication was sophisticated. The dates aligned with real events. The dollar amounts were plausible. The email language was casual and personal in a way that sounded like a real person rather than a generated document. It was a masterpiece of forgery, and it was all completely fake. But T-Min did not know that. He brought the envelope to Chan-woo's study at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night. He placed it on the desk without a word and stood back. Chan-woo opened it. He read every page. His face did not change, not a muscle, not a flicker. But his hands, T-Min noticed this, his hands stopped moving. They rested flat on the desk, palms down, fingers spread, pressing into the wood like he was trying to hold himself in place. Like the ground beneath him had just vanished, and his hands on the desk were the only thing keeping him from falling. "How long have you known?" Chan-woo asked. "The envelope arrived an hour ago," T-Min said. "I do not know who sent it, but the content is detailed, specific. It matches real data." Chan-woo was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Bring her." T-Min left the room. 5 minutes later, Brenda walked into the study. She was in her evening clothes, a soft gray sweater over a white t-shirt, her hair pulled back. She had been reading in her room. She looked relaxed. She stopped being relaxed the moment she saw Chan-woo's face. It was the face from her first day, the one that looked through people like they were glass. No warmth, no recognition, no trace of the man who had sat in the kitchen eating dinner with her, who had given her art supplies, who had listened to her sing from his balcony in the dark. That man was gone. The man in front of her was stone. He pushed the documents across the desk. "Explain," he said. Brenda looked down at the papers. She picked them up. She read the first email and her face went blank, not with guilt, but with genuine confusion. She read the second page, the third, the financial transfers. "I have never seen these emails," she said. "I do not have this email account. I have never contacted anyone about your business. I do not even know what half of these documents are referring to. The payments to your brother's account. I send my brother money from my paycheck. I have done that since he started school. It comes from my bank account, not from whatever this is." "There was a phone call," Chan-woo said. "Several weeks ago, someone contacted you about your brother, about an internship." Brenda felt the blood drain from her face. She had not told him about the call. She had not told anyone except no. She had only hung up and moved on. "Yes," she said slowly. "I got a call. A man offered Darius an internship in exchange for information about my employer. I said no. I hung up. You did not tell me. I know, I did not. Why? Because I thought it was nothing. I thought I handled it. You thought it was nothing. Someone contacted you, asked about your employer, and you thought it was nothing. Chanwoo. You hid it from me. The word hid landed between them like a grenade. Brenda flinched. I was not hiding anything. I did not want to worry you. You were already dealing with the lawsuit, I thought. You thought. His voice was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was empty. You thought. That is the problem. You do not get to think for me. You do not get to decide what I need to know about my own security. I understand that now, and I am sorry. But these emails are not mine. These transfers are not mine. Someone is setting me up. Everyone says that. I am not everyone. The silence that followed was the worst sound Brenda had ever heard. Chanwoo stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out at the desert, dark and vast and indifferent. Get out of my house, he said. Chanwoo, please. Get out. Brenda stood there. She stood there and waited for him to turn around to look at her, to see her the way he had been seeing her for the past 4 weeks, as a person, as someone who mattered, as the woman who sang his mother's lullaby in a courtyard full of lanterns. He did not turn around. Mrs. Pack appeared in the doorway. She had heard everything. She stepped forward and said, Chanwoo, please, she would not do this. I know this girl. She would not. He raised his hand, not in violence, never in violence, but in a gesture that was absolute, a wall slamming shut. This conversation is over, he said. Mrs. Pack looked at Brenda. Her face was shattered. Brenda walked out of the study. She walked to her room. She stood in the small space that had become her home for 7 months and looked at the walls she had decorated with sketches, the shelf where she kept her mother's Bible, the bedside table where the art supplies from Chanwoo sat in their brown paper wrapping. She left the art supplies on the bed. She packed her suitcase, the same one she had arrived with, the one that had ridden in the back of a dying Honda Civic from Memphis to Scottsdale. She packed her clothes, her mother's Bible, and nothing else. She did not take the lantern-making materials. She did not take the handwritten notes from staff members that she had pinned above her desk. She did not take anything that belonged to this chapter of her life. At 11 p.m., Brenda stood at a bus stop in Scottsdale with her suitcase at her feet and called Felicia. I need to come to Atlanta, she said. Her voice was steady. It would not stay steady for long. Bren, what happened? What? I will tell you when I get there. I just need a place to stay. You always have a place. You always have a place, Brenda. You know that. Brenda hung up. She sat on the bench and pressed her hands together and squeezed until her knuckles ached, because if she did not hold herself together physically, she was going to fall apart in public, and she had spent her whole life being too strong for that. Back at the estate, Chanwoo sat in his study alone. The documents were still spread across his desk. The leather journal was closed. The tea Brenda had made that morning sat on the corner, cold and untouched. He opened the locked drawer. He looked at the photograph of his mother. He looked at Brenda's note beside it. The note that said, "You are not alone." He was alone now. And somewhere beneath the anger and the betrayal and the 15 years of practice at shutting people out, a voice in his head, quiet, persistent, refusing to be silenced, whispered, "You just made the worst mistake of your life." 2 weeks after Brenda left, the Shin estate felt like a house with a missing organ. Mrs. Pack performed her duties in silence. She did not hum. She did not sing. She did not make small talk with the security guards. She moved through the rooms like a woman attending a funeral that nobody had officially announced. Romulo burned dinner twice in the first week. Chanwoo suspected this was deliberate. He did not say anything. Derek and Reggie, who had rotated shifts without complaint for years, both requested reassignments. They did not want to patrol the courtyard anymore. When asked why, Derek said, "It does not feel right being out there without her." Min was the most unsettled of all, though he would never admit it. He had brought Chan-woo the evidence. He had done his job. He had protected the boss. But late at night, alone in the security office, he kept pulling up Brenda's background file and staring at it. Clean, boringly clean. No debts that could not be explained by a woman raising her brother on 3 jobs. No connections to anyone in Chan-woo's business world. No motive. No reason. Something did not fit. Chan-woo himself was unraveling in ways that only someone who knew him very well would notice. He took his meetings. He reviewed his contracts. He fought the Rizzo lawsuit with his usual precision, but his timing was off. He was half a beat slow on decisions. He was distracted in conversations, drifting mid-sentence, catching himself staring at the courtyard through the glass doors. On November 29th, 2 weeks after the birthday, 12 days after he threw Brenda out, Chan-woo was in a meeting in Beverly Hills with his 3 major investors. One of them was presenting a quarterly report. The numbers were favorable. The Rizzo lawsuit was weakening. Everything was moving in the right direction. Chan-woo heard none of it. He was thinking about the kitchen. He was thinking about the small table where 4 people ate together, and one of them laughed in a way that made the room feel like it had a heartbeat. He was thinking about a woman who learned a Korean lullaby she did not understand and sang it in a courtyard full of handmade lanterns. Not for money, not for advantage, not for anything except the belief that a lonely man deserved to be celebrated. And then he thought, since when does a spy make songpyeon from scratch at 1 a.m. and cry over whether the texture is right? He excused himself from the meeting. That evening, he called a cybersecurity firm out of San Jose, California, a firm that had no connection to his business, no connection to Rizzo, no connection to anyone who might have a reason to shade the results. He gave them the documents, the emails, the financial records, the communication logs. He said, "I want the truth, every layer of it. I do not care what it costs or how long it takes. Trace every IP address, every account, every transfer, and do not talk to anyone about this. Not my lawyer, not my security chief, no one." They said it would take about 10 days. It took 9. The lead analyst flew from San Jose to Scottsdale to deliver the results in person. He sat across from Chan-woo in the study, the same study where Brenda had been fired, and opened a laptop. Every email attributed to Brenda Holloway was created from IP addresses linked to a shell company called Cascade West Holdings, the analyst said. That shell company is registered in Delaware, but operates out of Bellevue, Washington. Its registered agent is an attorney named Paul Kessler. Paul Kessler is the personal legal counsel of Vincent Rizzo. Chan-woo did not blink. The financial transfers were routed through 3 intermediary accounts before reaching the account in Darius Holloway's name. None of these intermediary accounts have any connection to Brenda Holloway. They were established within the last 6 weeks, specifically to create a paper trail that would lead back to her. The phone call she received, Chan-woo said. Made from a prepaid burner phone purchased at a convenience store in Bellevue, Washington, 9 days before the call was placed. We traced the purchase to a credit card belonging to one of Rizzo's corporate operatives. The analyst closed the laptop. "Mr. Shin, the evidence against your housekeeper was entirely fabricated. She had no involvement in any information leak. She was targeted specifically because of her proximity to you. The goal appears to have been to isolate you from someone who had influence on your personal stability." Chan-woo sat with the report for a long time after the analyst left. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to feel like control and now felt like a verdict. He picked up his phone and called Min. Min arrived in the study within 4 minutes. He stood in front of the desk and saw the report and understood immediately. Before Chan-woo could speak, Taemin said, "I owe you an apology. I brought you that evidence because I thought I was protecting you. I should have verified it independently before presenting it. That failure is mine, and I take full responsibility." Chan-woo looked at him. "I am not angry at you, Taemin." "You should be." "I am angry at myself. You did your job. You brought me information, and it was my decision to act on it without questioning it. I threw her out because I was looking for a reason not to trust her. Because trusting her meant—" He stopped. He pressed his palms flat on the desk. "It meant admitting that she mattered to me, and I was not ready for that." Taemin said nothing. "Find her," Chan-woo said. It did not take long. Brenda had not disappeared. She had not tried to hide. She was in Atlanta, staying with her cousin Felicia in a small apartment in Decatur. She had picked up a housekeeping job at a mid-range hotel near the city center. She was working double shifts, mornings and evenings, to make enough to cover her share of rent and still send money to Darius, who she had not told any of this to because she did not want to distract him during his semester. Taemin got this information from a background trace in 48 hours. He also learned one other thing, from a brief and uncomfortable phone call to Mrs. Pack, who had been in contact with Brenda exactly once since she left. Mrs. Pack said, "She has not sung since she left this house, not once. Felicia told me she does not sing anymore." Taemin relayed this to Chan-woo. He watched his boss's face when he said it. Something behind Chan-woo's eyes broke, quietly, privately, in a way that no one would ever see. But Taemin had known this man for 11 years, and he saw it. Meanwhile, Chan-woo made his move against Rizzo. Using the cybersecurity evidence, he filed counter-litigation in federal court. The filing exposed Rizzo's fabrication of evidence, his use of shell companies to conduct corporate espionage, and his deliberate targeting of a civilian, Brenda, as a tool of manipulation. Chan-woo's legal team, working out of offices in Beverly Hills and San Jose, contacted Rizzo's investors directly and presented them with the forensic evidence. The effect was immediate. Rizzo's investors were not criminals. They were wealthy, risk-averse business people who had backed Rizzo because he promised clean returns on real estate and construction ventures. The revelation that he was fabricating evidence and targeting innocent people to sabotage competitors made them nervous in a way that no amount of charm could fix. Within 72 hours, 3 of Rizzo's 4 major investors pulled their funding. His hostile merger attempt collapsed. The fraudulent lawsuit was withdrawn. The Bellevue safety investigations were dismissed. Rizzo called Chan-woo in a blind rage. His smooth voice was gone. The wine basket diplomacy was gone. Chan-woo listened to him rant for about 45 seconds. Then he said one sentence. "You used an innocent woman to get to me. That was your last mistake." He hung up. The business victory was complete. Rizzo would spend the next year under federal investigation. His empire would shrink to a fraction of what it had been. He would never threaten Chan-woo again. But Chan-woo did not feel victorious. He felt hollow. Because the person who had shown him that he was worth celebrating, the person who had made his house feel like a home for the first time since he was 17, was in a hotel in Atlanta scrubbing bathroom floors. And she was there because of him. He booked a flight to Atlanta for the following morning. Mrs. Pack found him in the kitchen at midnight, packing the songpyeon plate into a padded box. "You are bringing her plate?" Mrs. Pack asked. "She left it here. It belongs to her. She made the recipe. She earned it." Mrs. Pack studied his face. Then she reached out and touched his hand. It was the first time she had touched him in years. "Bring her home," the old woman said. Brenda clocked out of her shift at the Decatur Hotel at 7:14 p.m. on a Wednesday evening. Her back ached. Her feet ached more. The hotel was not bad as hotels went, clean, decent management. the kind of place where business travelers stayed when they needed something between a Motel 6 and a Ritz-Carlton. But the work was grinding. 8 hours on her feet, cleaning 16 rooms a day, stripping beds and scrubbing showers and vacuuming carpets until her arms felt like they were filled with sand. It was honest work. She was grateful for it, but it was not the same. Nothing was the same. In the 3 weeks since she left Scottsdale, Brenda had rebuilt the architecture of her life the way she always did, efficiently, quietly, without complaint. She split rent with Felicia. She budgeted her paychecks. She called Darius every Sunday evening and told him everything was fine. She had just decided to take a different position, nothing to worry about. Darius was too smart to fully believe her, but he was also deep in midterms, and Brenda's tone, cheerful, steady, motherly, was convincing enough to keep him from pressing. The one thing she could not rebuild was the singing. She had tried. The first night in Felicia's apartment, she was washing dishes and started humming automatically, the opening bars of an Anita Baker song, and her throat closed up mid-note like someone had wrapped a hand around it. She stood at the sink with water running over her fingers and could not make a sound. Felicia noticed, "You are not singing." "I am tired." "Bren, you have been tired your whole life. You always sang anyway." Brenda dried her hands and did not answer. She knew why she could not sing. It was not about exhaustion. It was about the last time she had sung, really sung, and who she had been singing for and what happened afterward. The song had become tangled with the memory. The lullaby in the courtyard, the lanterns, the look on Chan-woo's face when the first notes hit him, and then, days later, the other look, the one made of stone, the one that said, "You are nothing, you were never anything." Singing felt like opening a door she needed to keep shut. So she kept it shut. On this Wednesday evening, she walked through the hotel lobby in her wrinkled uniform, nodded to the front desk clerk, pushed through the employee exit door, and stepped into the parking lot. And stopped. A black SUV was parked 20 feet away. It was not a hotel guest's vehicle. It was too clean, too deliberate, parked at an angle that suggested someone who was waiting rather than visiting. T-Min was standing beside the rear passenger door. Brenda's breath caught. She had not seen T-Min in 3 weeks, and the sight of him, rigid posture, dark suit, granite expression, catapulted her back to the estate so violently that her knees almost buckled. But there was something different about him. His face was not hostile. It was not suspicious. It was something she had never seen on Kwon T-Min's face before. It was soft. He stepped aside and opened the rear door of the SUV. Chan-woo stepped out. He was not wearing a suit. He was wearing a simple black shirt and dark jeans. No tie, no cufflinks, no armor. He looked like a man who had not slept in several days, which was true, and who had spent the flight from Scottsdale to Atlanta rehearsing what he wanted to say, which was also true, and who had forgotten every word the moment he saw her standing in a parking lot in a wrinkled hotel uniform with shadows under her eyes and her hair pulled back, and absolutely no idea he was coming. Brenda did not move. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were fists at her sides. She felt the tears building behind her eyes, and she clenched every muscle in her body against them, because she had cried once on a bus stop bench in Scottsdale, and she had promised herself that was the last time. Chan-woo walked toward her. He stopped 3 feet away, the same distance as that night in the study months ago when he had looked at her and said, "You are always here." The same distance as the courtyard when she had looked at him and said, "Every person here is grateful you were born." 3 feet, close enough to reach, too far to touch. He spoke. His voice was rough, like something that had been unused for too long and was remembering how to work. "I know what Rizzo did," he said. "I hired an independent firm. They traced every email, every transfer, every account. All of it was fabricated, created by Rizzo's people to make it look like you were selling information. You were set up, Brenda. You were targeted because he knew you mattered to me, and he knew that destroying my trust in you was the fastest way to destroy me. Brenda said nothing. I have the proof, he continued. Every document, every trace, I can show you all of it. And I filed a federal case against Rizzo. His investors pulled out. His company is collapsing. He will never come near you or your brother again. Brenda still said nothing. The tears were winning the war against her muscles. She could feel them slipping past her defenses, collecting at the edges of her eyes. Chan-woo took a breath. But I did not come here to tell you that. She blinked. One tear fell, she did not wipe it. I came here to tell you that even if I never found that proof, even if I spent the rest of my life not knowing the truth, losing you would still be the worst thing I have ever done. His voice cracked. Shin Chan-woo's voice cracked, and the sound of it went through Brenda like an earthquake. Because you did something no one has done since my mother died, he said. You made me feel like I deserved to exist. You learned a song in a language you do not speak. You made my mother's recipe at 1 a.m. until you got it right. You hung lanterns with your own hands in a courtyard I could not even walk into. And you did all of that for a man who never said good morning to you. For a man who looked through you for 7 months like you were furniture. He paused. You should have hated me long before I gave you a reason to. Brenda's lip trembled. You threw me out of your house. I know. You did not even let me explain. I know. I made you Songpyeon, Chan-woo. I stood in your courtyard and sang a song I did not understand because I thought. Her voice broke. She pressed her hand against her mouth for a moment, steadied herself, and continued. Because I thought you were worth it. You were right, he said. You were right, and I did not deserve it. And I am standing here because I need you to know that you were not just my maid. Brenda looked at him. You were the first person in 15 years who made my birthday mean something, he said. You were the first person who left a note in my drawer that I read every single night after you left. You were the first person who made that house feel like a home. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it out to her. Brenda took it. She unfolded it. It was the note, her note, the one she had left outside his study door with the Songpyeon. You are not alone. But underneath her handwriting, in his sharp, precise script, he had added 3 words. Because of you. Brenda closed her eyes. The tears came freely now, and she let them, because some things are too heavy to hold with clenched fists and dry eyes. Chan-woo said, I am not asking you to come back as my housekeeper. I am asking you to come back as the woman I want beside me, not behind me, not below me, beside me, if you will let me earn that. Brenda opened her eyes. She looked at this man. This powerful, broken, terrified man who had flown across the country to stand in a hotel parking lot with no suit and no armor and no guarantee. She said, You are going to have to do a lot more than show up in a parking lot, Chan-woo. He almost smiled, almost. I know. You are going to have to actually talk to me. About your mother, about all of it. No locked drawers, no walls. I know. And I swear, if you ever tell me to get out again, I will not. How do I know that? He stepped closer. The 3 feet became 2, became 1. Because the last 3 weeks without you were worse than the 15 years before I met you, he said. And I am never going back to that. Brenda studied his face. She had spent 7 months learning to read this man, his routines, his preferences, the tiny shifts in his expression that passed for emotion. She had learned to read him the way a person learns to read a language written in small print, carefully, patiently, 1 word at a time. And right now, his face was saying something he had probably never said out loud in his life. It was saying, I need you, and that terrifies me, and I am here anyway. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm, firm, shaking slightly. Behind them, Taemin turned away from the SUV. He looked up at the sky. He blinked several times in rapid succession. He brought his hand to his face and wiped his eye with the back of his knuckle. He would deny this later, aggressively. 6 months later, the courtyard at the Shin estate in Scottsdale was unrecognizable. The paper lanterns were permanent now, replaced with handmade versions that Brenda had crafted from the high-quality materials Chan-woo bought her, strung along the pergola and around the reflecting pool. The desert landscaping had been expanded with a small garden that Brenda planted herself, herbs, wildflowers, a lemon tree that had no business surviving in Arizona, but was somehow thriving out of spite. There was a small stage area near the pool. It was not fancy, just a raised platform with a microphone stand and some soft lighting. Chan-woo had it built after Brenda started a community music project for underprivileged youth in the Phoenix area, free voice lessons, songwriting workshops, and recording sessions for kids who had talent and no access. She had mentioned the idea once on a phone call with Felicia, not knowing Chan-woo was in the next room. The check was written the next morning. He did not ask for credit. He did not put his name on the project. He just made it happen. Darius graduated from Vanderbilt at the end of the spring semester with honors. Chan-woo offered him an internship at the construction firm's Beverly Hills office, legitimately, based on Darius's academic record and a real interview process, because Chan-woo told Brenda that she had raised a brilliant kid, and he was not going to insult either of them by handing him something he had not earned. Darius accepted. He moved to Beverly Hills in June. He called Brenda every Sunday, same as always, except now the conversations were longer and lighter and sometimes ended with Darius saying, "So, is Chan-woo there? Put him on. I need to talk to him about the Bellevue project." The first time that happened, Brenda handed Chan-woo the phone with a look on her face that he did not fully understand until later. It was pride. Not for Darius. Not for Chan-woo. For herself. For the 19-year-old girl who dropped out of college and worked 3 jobs and raised a 13-year-old boy into a man who was now calling a former stranger, Hyung, and arguing with him about construction timelines. She had earned this, every piece of it. Rizzo's empire collapsed under the weight of the federal investigation. His assets were frozen. His investors scattered. His name became a cautionary tale in business circles from Bellevue to Beverly Hills. He would spend the next several years in courtrooms, paying lawyers he could no longer afford, trying to salvage a reputation that no longer existed. Mrs. Pak was teaching Brenda to cook a full Korean meal. They spent Saturday mornings in the kitchen, Brenda at the cutting board, Mrs. Pak at the stove, both of them talking over each other in a mix of English and Korean that neither of them fully understood and both of them fully enjoyed. Romulo pretended to be offended that Brenda was learning Korean cooking instead of Filipino cooking. He was not. He was the one who bought her a Korean cookbook for Christmas and wrote inside the cover, "You brought this house back to life. Do not let Mrs. Pak take all the credit." T-Min had accepted Brenda into the inner circle. This meant he no longer watched her with suspicion. He now watched her with the protective vigilance he usually reserved for Chan-woo alone, which meant that anyone who looked at Brenda wrong had approximately 3 seconds to correct their behavior before a compact, sharp-eyed Korean man materialized at their shoulder and asked if there was a problem. Brenda found this both touching and slightly terrifying. And every year on November 15th, the courtyard was lit. The lanterns glowed. The songpyeon was made from scratch, Brenda and Mrs. Pak, side by side at 1 a.m. because that was their tradition now, and traditions do not adjust themselves for reasonable bedtimes. The staff gathered. The cards were written. And Brenda sang. She sang the lullaby, the one she learned phonetically from an old Korean woman in a midnight kitchen, the one that was about a mother watching over her sleeping child, the one that had stopped a man's breathing and started his heart at the same time. She sang it every year, and every year Chan-woo stood in the courtyard and listened, and every year he breathed. Not the shallow, controlled breathing of a man who had spent 15 years holding himself together. Real breathing, deep and full and unafraid. She was his maid. She planned a secret birthday. And what she truly did, was not just leave him speechless. She gave him back the one thing he had buried with his mother. She gave him back his life. And that is where this story ends. If you felt something watching this, if there was a moment that hit you in the chest and you are still thinking about it right now, I need you to drop a comment and tell me which part it was. Was it the courtyard scene? Was it the parking lot? Was it Mrs. Pack crying over the songpyeon at 1 a.m.? I want to know. Hit that like button if you believe Brenda and Chan Woo deserved every bit of this ending, and I will see you in the next one.